Hey everyone, welcome back to Engelbart Gaming. Today I've got another episode of How About That for you, where I take a look at a good game and play it all the way through with commentary. Today I'll be looking at the NES version of Double Dragon. I'm not going to spend a lot of time telling you about Double Dragon, because I've done that several times before. The arcade game came out in 1987, this NES port came out in June of 1988. The arcade version was 2 players at the same time, and helped define the entire scrolling beat-em-up genre. The NES is basically the only good home version of it, even though it takes a lot of liberties and makes a lot of changes. How many changes? What kind of changes? Watch and find out right now. Alright, and here we are. This is NES Double Dragon's title screen. First, they have a great rendition of the music in this game. So the title screen music is great, all the level music is great, very well translated. Also, I will note, this was the very first version of Double Dragon I ever played. I got this as an elementary school graduation present for my older brother when I was like 12 years old, so that tells you how long I've been playing this game. Another note, we also went out to see Who Framed Roger Rabbit in the movies the same day, so that was an interesting day indeed. Alright, and here we go, we've got sort of the arcade opening. It's a little different characters there, the background's not the same. We get this little intro to every mission, and then we're going to start the game proper right now. Now, note, Double Dragon NES, once more, is only 1 player at a time in the standard sort of arcade action mode. There is the one-on-one fighting version of the game with larger characters, and that one is 2 players, but that's just one-on-one fighting. If you're wondering why I'm just punching these guys over and over again, let me call your attention to the lower left corner where you see a heart and some numbers to the left of it. This game uses an RPG-like experience system. So when you start the game, the only things you can do are punch, kick, and jump. You don't even have a punch combo. You just punch 6 times and an enemy falls over, or you kick 3 times and an enemy falls over. Now that I've gotten my second level of hearts, I have combo finishers, so now I can do an uppercut after 5 punches, and a spin kick after 2 kicks. And I'll go through the whole thing in a little while. So here you can see we've got more of the arcade enemies. We started out seeing the Williams characters, which are definitely identifiable. Now we have the Linda characters with their whips. Again, they look pretty good. I mean, obviously everything is very, very scaled down from the arcade version, and they didn't really try to mimic that game's style too much. And here's our first set of ropers, and I've got to say, one other thing that is weird and stands out in this game is you can only have 1 type of enemy on screen at once, and there can only be 2 of them on screen at once. So the total amount of characters you can see on screen is your 1-player character, 2 enemies, and then, whatever weapons may be lying around, like a knife, this oil can that we see here, or a baseball bat or a whip. And for fun on this playthrough, I did show off a few glitches, and we'll get to one in just a moment here. They don't really amount to much except for the one in the second level, which, if you know, you know. If you don't, I'll explain it when we get there. But yeah, once again, I'm getting a few level ups here. So at 3 hearts, when you get that level up, you get the ability to do jump kicks. Prior to that, if you jump kick with only 1 or 2 hearts, you only jump. You don't actually kick, he just jumps and doesn't attack. Now watch this. For absolutely no reason, we can walk up this wall. If you try and punch or kick while you're in there, you just fall. If you go all the way up, you come out the bottom and get to keep going again. So, doesn't really serve any purpose, but it's there, and it's fun. And you can see this game has a lot of flicker. When we were all on the same line, the whip entirely disappeared, as well as the legs from some of the characters. That is due to the sprite limitations of the NES. Probably also some more primitive multiplexing. So here's our second section, and yeah, you can tell from here that the levels really don't follow the arcade version. While the first area of the first level is kind of similar, this boss area here is completely different. It's more like the end of level 2 in the arcade game. And yeah, you can cheese a Bobo right off of that treadmill. See ya! And there's level 1 finished. And here's our intro to Mission 2. Mission 2, as you can see, visually is radically different than the arcade versions. Now we can still see some construction elements like the beams in the background and the fences and stuff, but the overall look is quite a bit different than the arcade game. You'll also notice I just went up to 4 hearts there. Getting 4 hearts gives me the move where I can grab the enemies by the hair, then knee them and throw them like that. You can also see, much like the arcade version, we have a little box that the enemies can throw at you in this section. And coming up right now, we'll have a Williams that throws dynamite, just like the arcade game. Now we've got a edge here that we can get them off of. It is our duty to knock enemies into the abyss whenever possible. And so I have. Now we're about to do the next trick here, so you'll see that coming up in a moment. These enemies are the Williamses, by the way. It's a lot faster to jump off of these things than crawl down them. So we've got a couple of Williams enemies here, and there'll be a few that spawn in if you stay and do this fight. But why would you stay and do this fight when you can do this? Wait till the Williams gets right next to the beams, climb up the fence, and walk until you get him just off screen. You don't even have to go down. Come back over this way, take a little jump off there, and guess what? Now there's the invisible Williams trick. You can just keep on hitting him even though he's not there, and pound away and keep getting those experience points and getting more hearts. You can do this until you're completely full, which means you have all 7. So I just leveled up to 5 hearts. What you get with 5 hearts is the pin attack, where you can knock enemies down on the ground, and then sit on them, and punch them in the face until they die, by blinking away into the great afterlife. So we're on our way towards 6 hearts. I'll tell you what we get in 6 hearts as soon as we make it. We're almost there, and 6 hearts, hooray! What we get now is the elbow smash. Not quite as good as the arcade version. You can't just use it to cheese every enemy to death, but it's a lot more powerful, and some enemies even die in just 1 hit from it. Many others only take 2 or 3. And we're almost on the way here. We've just about got our final heart, and there we go, 7 hearts, yes! With 7 hearts, you get the leaping forward spin kick. It replaces the standing spin kick at the end of a kick combo and is a lot more powerful. Right now we've taken him out, and we're going up to this section that is very unique to the NES version, where we get to climb a building that's under construction vertically. And this is the first area in the game where we have some platforms that don't have any depth, so you can't move into or away from the background. You just walk in a straight line on these, and you can go up the ladders, and that's it. Here we are accosted by the Linda enemies. There's the pin attack move in action. We're going to keep on heading up towards the top here. And then the boss will come out of here. The boss is a character that is unique to the NES version named Chin, who sort of replaced a palette swap of Billy and Jimmy from the arcade version that had a different head. But you don't even have to fight Chin. You can just crawl down this ladder here and get to the end of the mission that way. As soon as he's off screen, you win. Here's Mission 3. Mission 3 is a forest area just like the arcade. We come into Mission 3, of course, fully powered up, which makes dealing with enemies here a lot easier than it would be if you came in with just 3, 4, or 5 hearts. Always fun to grab the enemies and toss them around. It would have been nice if enemies damaged each other when you threw an enemy into a standing enemy. Doesn't work that way in this one, unfortunately. And then after you get jump kicks, the enemies get them also, and they become extra annoying by jump kicking very often, as you are seeing here. There's my super powerful elbow smash in action. So you may be wondering, with the limited 2-button setup, how you do the elbow in this game. And the answer is, the game sort of automatically does it for you. You've got to line yourself up so that an enemy is close and behind you, and then just press the punch button, and it will do it. It'll figure it out on its own. It's context sensitive. And this is not a perfect way to do it, since sometimes you will punch forward when you want to do an elbow instead, but it works for the most part. And there's an example with Chin there. If you don't weaken the enemies enough before you do a pin attack to smash them in the face, they will just throw you off of them. Generally, that's if they have more than 4 punches to the face left. And even with the enemies sometimes dodging the elbow smash in this one, it's still the fastest way to get rid of them. And while I could have thrown this Williams into the water, they have so few, hit points, it was easier to just deal with them that way. But I will throw at least one enemy into the water because How could I have all this water around and not throw an enemy into it? I would never do that to you and make you watch that. Or will I? Nope, here it is, just kidding. And you get to see a satisfying little splash. One other thing I'll call out is you can see the weird little sort of black box in the lower right corner that's on top of the graphics. Something that you would see in real hardware also, I don't know why. So we take out a couple of ropers, a couple more. Then we'll be onto a section with some abobos. No treadmill to get rid of them this time, we're gonna have to beat them the old-fashioned way. To death. So they do break out of the wall, sort of like the arcade version. Doesn't have the animation frame of them punching through the wall, but that's alright. Here again we can see quite a bit of flicker, as the two of them are in the same line with Billy here. I don't know why I'm punching them instead of elbowing. I think I just kind of forgot about the elbow until right there. There we go. Much faster and easier way to take them out. It's also easy to, after you knock them over, line them up, sort of get even with their boots and spin kick them as they get up. Which you'll see me do that a little bit later. Now here's a weird thing with the NES version. After you beat the abobo here, if you keep walking to the right, which will be your first instinct whenever playing these games, the level loops around back to the beginning and just keeps going on forever. You have to physically walk into the cave. And here's another area that has no equivalent in the arcade version. This one is unique to the NES port of the game. So we've got, again, an area where it's just standard platforming. There's no depth. You can't walk into or out of the background. You can only walk left and right. And then we've got some of these actual moving platforms that we can jump onto. And then we've got to do some fighting in this area, which, without having the depth of being able to move up and down, is kind of annoying. So now we've got to take on especially two of these chin enemies at the same time. They are not super easy to deal with this way. There are things you can do to kind of get them faster. Sometimes you can line them up and hit them with your leaping spin kicks sort of right away at the door. I kind of forgot to set up for that, so I have to fight them the old-fashioned way and beat them to death, like I mentioned before. Once again, if you walk past this door, you'll see that things loop, so we need to go into it. And then we're in another cave section. This time we've got some flashing lights for some reason. So I should have probably warned you about that. If you have epilepsy or sensitivity to this, you might want to fast forward to just get to the very next section, which is about 2 minutes from now. Maybe 3. You'll know when you're out of the cave. For most weapons, you can do a jump kick and knock them easily out of the enemy's hands. For the dynamite, there is a chance it will explode on your feet when you do a jump kick. It's better to get close, let them throw it, and then walk away from it, which I did not do there. And here, you always just want to leap down there. If you do it right, the boulders won't hit you. I didn't do it right, so the boulders hit me. How about that? Hey, that's the name of the show. So we've got this tiny little section with the stalactites. You just walk past that. You do another giant leap off into this section here where we've got to fight 2 more abobos one at a time. Again, it's tougher to use the elbow smash here, so it's easiest to use the technique where you're sort of getting close on them as they're getting up. They can't hit you if you're in the right spot, and then you just do your kick combos that end with a leaping spin kick to take them out. And yeah, if you ever need to knock them down, just a handy old jump kick will do. The jump kicks in this do very, very little damage to the enemy, so really it's just to knock them down so you can position yourself for stronger attacks. And don't worry, even though he's dodging some, we've got this guy. Once again, you've got to go into the cave to continue. And then this section can be super annoying and you've got to be careful. So we can leap off and do this the easy way, fight a few Lindas down here, toss them into the great abyss below. And then the level will end with this door at the bottom opening. But if you don't quite leap off in the exact right way, some of the enemies will be left standing up there, and you'll have to actually climb the bricks to get back to the top and jump over to them. And you don't have a ton of time in this section, so it's possible that if you messed up, well, you might not have time to finish this. But anyway, that's the end of Mission 3. Onward to Mission 4, which is our final mission in this game. So yeah, sort of like the arcade one, we've got these bricks that punch you if you get in front of them in the wrong time. Sometimes the timing on these is really tricky, but they seem like they're less random than the arcade ones, so it's usually a little easier to walk through without getting hit at all. Once more, we've got some bottomless pits here that I'm going to try and take advantage of. And there's one chin down. The other one, oop, didn't quite line it up, right? While I'm trying to grab the enemies, it's sort of flaky and fidgety the way you do it, but there you go, we got him. Another chin down. And then that one, once again, aligns himself vertically higher than me. And I almost got knocked into the abyss myself there. That's no good. Bottomless pits are for enemies, not for Billy Lees. And this guy just does not want to get in the pit. Whew, another close call there. But there you go. 3 chins down. 4 chins in the pit. This should be the final chin. Will he go in the pit? Will he? Will he or won't he? Isn't this exciting? Who knows what'll happen to him? And oh, every chin in the pit. 5 pitted chins. Then we've got an Abobo who shows up here, but why fight him? See you later, Abobo. We're just going to go on with the game. So I'll finish this section with a gaggle of ropers. A gaggle of ropers. I think I'm going to make that the official name for a group of ropers. From now on, anyone who refers to them as anything other than a gaggle of ropers... Well, you're wrong! You don't want to be wrong, do you? But yeah, standard attacks. Just take them out, and then guess what? You've got to go into the doors to go on with the game. And we've got what is our final platforming section. This is another one where you've got to be super careful. Sometimes if you jump past these Williams and get them off screen, they won't die, and you've got to try and go back to get them. And in some places, you actually can't. So you might get stuck here and have to lose a life. The key is try to be not standing on any platforms at the point that a door would open to let a Williams out. So you want to knock them over, and then while they're falling, get down to your next platform. Or up to your next platform, whatever the case may be. Yeah, and this area is a little maze-like. It's very small, so you're not going to get lost, but there's plenty of places where you could take a leap of faith and die if you don't know what's coming. A lot of people hate these platforming sections in a Double Dragon game, and yeah, they're a bit out of place, I guess. But platforming was super big at the time. There was no game bigger than Super Mario Bros., even at the point where this came out. And many games at the time tried to include some type of platforming segment. There was a lot of genre experimentation going on back then. And it's not bad here. They're not awful in Double Dragon, but some of the collision detection is weird, and it's too easy sometimes to walk off of platforms and just fall. Alright, and here we are, guys. This is the final section of the final mission. And yes, it does play the correct music, unlike so many home versions of Double Dragon that decide not to play the theme music on this part. Why do they all play the wrong music here? I couldn't tell you. I have no idea why they do that. And that's evil, considering the theme music is the best song in the entire game. So once again, I'm relying on the elbow smashes to take these enemies out. With the Williams, it does kill them in one shot. And we have to move on to take out a whole group of different enemies. You will see that there is no Marion hanging on the wall in this version of the game, which you will find her in this area in most versions. Also, this room's a little small compared to the arcade version, but about the same size that we see on Genesis. The Genesis port of the game is pretty terrible. I did that as a comparison episode of Utterly Pointless Comparisons a couple of years ago. If you want to check it out, I'll link it in this video description. And while I'm finishing off these enemies here, and there's not a whole lot to say, I will say that NES Double Dragon, in my opinion, is by far the best home version of Double Dragon that you could get, before the mid-90s. I mean, all the other versions have some glaring flaw or another, and only one glaring flaw if you're super lucky. But the Sega Master System version, while it was 2 players, it's just a lot sloppier than this one. It has more things on screen, but it's full of flicker. It's very slow. Your characters are even shorter and squatter than this one. Their attacks don't connect very well. and it's just the collision detection for fighting is just weird, and punches and kicks just don't feel right. So that one, in my opinion, is way worse than this one. And here's Willy. Easiest way to take down Willy here is to get some kicks, grab his hair, and throw him around. Gotta be super careful not to get shot by his bullets. Some other versions of Double Dragon you could get at the time were the home computer versions, all of which are complete and utter garbage. I did a complete trash version of the original Amiga Double Dragon, and if you want to see pathetic, you can watch that one. But it doesn't really matter which computer version you got, all the computer versions of Double Dragon 1 are terrible. Now, most versions of Double Dragon, after you beat Machine Gun Willy there, you've won the game. In this one, Billy Lee here has to take on his twin brother Jimmy, who is secretly the head of the syndicate. Interesting thing to do, since this game was only one player and you couldn't play as Jimmy anyway, instead they made you face him at the end, and he's got an awful lot of hit points or energy or whatever you want to call it. So anyway, for other home ports of Double Dragon, we had the Sega Genesis version, which was so-so at best. It had the potential to be perfect, but it was done by people who were not very experienced, and it showed, and the sound was absolutely terrible, and the collision detection was kind of wonky. We also had a version of Double Dragon on the Game Gear, which I have also featured in its own complete trash episode. I'll link all of these in the description. That one is not a port of the arcade game, it's not based on it, it's completely different, and it's terrible, maybe the worst one of them all. We did get a pretty good version of Double Dragon on the Game Boy, the original black and white Game Boy, or green Game Boy I should say. That one is a lot slower, but it's kind of similar to this one, except you start with your move set right from the beginning. You don't have to level up. And really, until we started seeing, arcade emulation of Double Dragon, like through that method, we wouldn't see anything even resembling the arcade game. And it's sad that it was such a huge influential game in its time, and so many of the versions that people could play at home were just so utterly awful. Thankfully, at least, not the case with this one. Lacks the two-player mode, but other than that, I mean, this was easily the best way to play a version of Double Dragon at home. And for our ending, Marion's in a room. She looks kind of weird in this one, but not as weird as some other versions. And it will end with her giving you the kiss. There's absolutely no panty shot in this one. Sorry, perverts, this is NES we're dealing with. And they did work in the cat that we saw in other levels in the arcade version, especially sitting on top of oil cans, and stuck him under the table in this ending sequence. No credits this time around, just straight back to the title screen we go. And there you have it, NES Double Dragon. Alright, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time here with post-game analysis. I said plenty during the gameplay in this one. Definitely the best home version of Double Dragon you could get while it was out. Every other version from this era was just awful. Just awful. Can't stress it enough. So if you want to play a good, contemporary, home version of Double Dragon, this is really your only choice. So what do you think? What's your favorite home port of Double Dragon? Was it this NES version? Are you in the Sega Master System camp because of its two-player simultaneous play? Do you actually like any of those god-awful computer versions? Or the even more god-awful Game Gear version? I'd love to hear all about it in the comments. Let me know your opinion. And that'll do it for this video, my retro gaming friends. If you enjoyed it, please toss it a like and share it online somewhere. Please share these. Sometimes the algorithm is very cruel to me. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss one of my videos. If you want to support the work I do here, you can do that on Patreon or Ko-fi as usual, and not too long ago I added the ability to sign up for channel memberships right here on YouTube. With that, I'll say thanks for watching, and see me later.